Welcome to Foundations of Human Design. This is class 15 already. It's crazy how time has flown by. And today we're going to be talking about the emotional center or the solar plexus in the body graph chart. But first off, what I wanted to do with you is take you through just a grounding, centering, expanding type of visualization, meditation, whatever you want to call it. And you'll understand as we go further into what the center is. But one of the things that the center, the biology of the center, is our nervous system. And so to regulate our nervous system is completely attached to our emotions and our emotional body. And oftentimes it's really feeling the sense of oneness with the self and with life itself, or not, or separation and competition and fighting and all of those things. And so as I was preparing and just grounding myself in this evening, I was using a tuning fork that I use, and I just felt like I wanted to take you through something really simple, but to help you really ground in and expand, because this center that we're going to be going through this tonight is the most powerful center in our body graph. And it's truly the core of it, in my experience, and in my studies with this and in my own experience, being an emotionally defined being, is that it really has everything to do with how connected we are to source, to God, to spirit, to ourselves, and feeling abundance in connection. So I just want everyone to get comfortable where you're at, whether that's sitting, laying down, standing, whatever that is for you. Tune into your own authority in this and do what you need to do, be where you need to be in order to receive this for just the next few minutes, supporting yourself through this. So it's going to be very simple, and it's just going to be visualization. And the first thing we're going to do is just simply close your eyes and trust that where you're at right now, in this space that you're in, the room that you're in, the chair that you're in, the couch that you're sitting on, the floor that you're sitting on or standing on, or wherever you're at, is exactly where you need to be right now. There's nowhere else that you need to be other than where you are right now. The only truth in this moment is where you're at right now. So tune into that. Now, physically orient yourself into the room, maybe moving your feet on the ground a little bit, feeling the chair beneath you, the surface, whatever surface it is beneath you, feeling the support. And feel that safety and that security. And now do that for yourself within yourself. Where are you? What are you feeling? Are you feeling nervous at all? Are you feeling worry at all? Are you feeling anxious at all? What about this last week into today? What have you experienced? What emotions have you experienced? And what stories have you told yourself about the emotions that you're experiencing? While there's no truth in the now, if you are emotionally defined, there's no truth in the emotions that we feel. We feel them and they feel very true. And they are true for us. They're not true to the situation that may be happening. But what they reveal, the truth of what they reveal, are beliefs and of stories that are hidden beneath the surface within our subconscious. So being aware of those stories will allow you to understand the emotions that you experience and why you experience them. When we can let go of any emotion that we're feeling, realizing that there is if it's a quote unquote negative type of emotion, something that we're not wanting to feel, recognizing there's a higher vibration to that emotion. If it's an emotion that we're enjoying, enjoy it. Just don't get attached to it. Oftentimes we cling to the emotions that feel good and dread the emotions that don't feel good and do anything we can to avoid them. This is about honoring everything that's within you and realizing that as long as we're acknowledging what's happening within us and where we're at within ourselves, within our emotional body, bringing awareness to these spaces within us will draw us closer to spirit. It will draw us closer to ourselves. And therefore, we will feel abundant. Because the closer we are with spirit and with source and ourselves, the more at peace, the more satisfied we feel. So I want you to visualize in this grounded state. If you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling at ease without any expectation, just being in the moment, experiencing this for the sake of experiencing it. I want you to visualize a figure 8 right in front of your chest. And I want you to imagine yourself, maybe you can do this if you'd like to in front of you, maybe with your hand, just kind of drawing this figure 8 as I'm doing in front of my chest. Or you can just visualize you doing this, or you can do it with your eyes even. You could follow the figure 8 pattern with your eyes and visualize you bringing this symbol of infinity, this symbol of expansion, this symbol of forever and eternity around your heart center. Expanding your heart center into this energy. And as you do this, move this figure 8 all around your body. Maybe you are imagining yourself, your whole self in a figure 8, as this figure 8 is constantly moving and moving around, and you're just in the center of this figure 8. Whatever this is for you, trust that it is correct for you. This figure 8 for me reminds me there is no beginning and there is no end. So when I'm rushing and I have expectations, my emotions are running amok, I slow down, expanding into the now, because it's the only truth of where we're at is right now. Just be with yourself here just for a moment. Imagining this figure 8 encircling you, maybe just certain parts of your body. Maybe it's over your mind. Maybe your mind needs to remember that it's not black or white. It's not this or this. We live in an and world. It's this and this. How can we relax and let go? Into just what's happening right now. Realizing that this is the only truth that will lead you to spirit, will lead you to source, will lead you to God, will lead you to yourself. As you finish up this time that you've given to yourself, just thank yourself for allowing yourself to slow down for a moment. Even if there were distractions around you, especially if there were distractions around you. This is life. And we can choose to expand into life or retract. And sometimes we do both. But remembering that we always have a choice. And when you're ready, you can come back. And if y'all wouldn't mind coming back, if you don't have to put on your camera if you don't want to, but just when you're back, just let me know. Just maybe take your voice off the microphone and let me know.
I'm back.
Thank you.
I'm back.
Thank you. Awesome. Yes. I wanted to just ground in for a moment, and I hope that all of you were able to do that as well too, and for whatever that was for you, whatever peace, satisfaction, success, or surprise that brought you, as I'm speaking on our themes, signature themes for each type.
I just want to say thank you, because I think I needed that, because I was already kind of feeling rushed to get here and kind of rushed to get everything sort of set up. So that was awesome, because my day has been rushed. So I appreciate that. I actually feel a whole lot better and honestly more able to receive, I think. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Danielle, for that reflection. That is
when I was feeling a little rushed, coming home from work, just trying to throw food in real quick for the kids, like needed the time to kind of settle here.
awesome. I'm glad. Thank you for that feedback too, Alicia. Thank you. Yeah, it's life can feel so crazy, right? Especially nowadays as well too. And just everything, there's so much stimuli out in the world and everything. So to come back and just take a few minutes to ground in, however that looks. And that's the thing, like, I just, we don't need things. We can just do it. And off the top of our head, we don't need anything. It's just moving with spirit. And as it moves through, and I didn't have any of that rehearsed. It was just like, oh, I want to do something with figure 8. I just had that pop into my head when I was doing that for myself. And so wanting to bring you all through that and realizing, like, just knowing that that was something that I wanted to do. So I'm glad that it was beneficial, and just realizing how simple it can be to root into ourselves and to ground in and to be present, right? We know where we're at physically, but just to check in and going, oh, where am I at right here? Where inside of me, myself? And that is so important as we're going to be talking about the emotional center tonight as well too, because I am emotionally defined, and I know some of you are as well too. And it is the most powerful center in the body graph. And it is the one that, in my experience, takes a lot to work with, and it takes a lot to I don't want to say master, because I feel like it's just an ongoing process and unraveling within ourselves, but it just takes a lot of courage and bravery to move into that space. And so whether you're emotionally defined or whether you're not, this can be a very challenging center, with half of the people in the world defined and half of the people undefined. And if you want to, I have notes. I can pull them up for you on the screen, if that would help too. I'm going to go by the notes as well too, but I'm just going to also kind of just go by what I know for, hold on, let me try to find it here now. But it can be a challenging center for, there we are. It can be a challenging center for whether you're defined or you're undefined. And, it is an awareness center. We went over the other awareness centers, which the spleen is an awareness center and the ajna is an awareness center. And the solar plexus is the third awareness center. And with every awareness center that we have, the 3 awareness centers all have certain types of fears that are attached to them. So there is fear within our solar plexus, within our emotional center. So it's no surprise that at times we can be afraid of our emotions. We can be afraid of our confrontation, right? If you're undefined emotionally, you're going to feel everybody else's emotions around you. The undefined emotional center people are really the true empaths, because you're feeling everything and you're bringing it in and you're amplifying it back out to the world. So oftentimes undefined emotional center people can be looked at as so emotional and over the top and all of these things, but they're not. It's the fact that if that's happened to you and you are undefined emotionally, realize that that oftentimes you've probably attached yourself to somebody else's emotional experience. You've identified with their emotional experience and you think it's yours. And it's not yours. So how freeing is that, right? So this center offers such amazing wisdom, and not only for the undefined center, but also for the defined center as well too. It's just that it can also wreak so much havoc, not only in our own lives, but in the world as well too. So if we think about this, the defined emotional center, the unaware defined emotional center are people that are reacting straight up from their emotions with no pause, no ability to be aware of what they're being, of how they're reacting to what they're feeling. And this causes so much distortion because they're acting with impulsivity. They feel it and they act. And this is why if you are emotionally defined, it is like not advisable and not correct to be impulsive with taking action on how you feel. Because you need to wait through the wave, and we're going to go through the waves here in just a bit. But so an unaware, emotionally defined person, which it's half of the world roughly, is programming the world with this emotional resonance, this emotional like energy that's just causing distortion in the field when there's no awareness around it. And if you're undefined, you're feeling all of this, you're amplifying it, you're feeling it even stronger probably than someone that's emotionally defined, especially if they're not aware of it. And you're trying to do everything to not feel it, to not be with that person, to not confront it, to not have a conversation around it, to just hopefully it'll just pass. And so there's this like, there's this whole thing. And I mean, let's just get real. Like if we think about things, we think about even our families, like, I do a lot of readings for people, and I find so often there's, and within my family as well too, like kind of family secrets in a sense, or family things that nobody wants to talk about, right? That goes back to just different things. I mean, some things are, horrific, and some things are silly, and everything in between. But it's because this, like, somebody most likely acted out of an emotional space. And then the other people that were undefined didn't want to deal with it. And I was like, let's not talk about that, because we don't want to hurt their feelings, and we don't want to deal with this anymore. And it's just best if we ignore it, because if we ignore it, hopefully it'll just go away, or I just won't have to deal with it. So, and you can see the distortion that brings generation after generation after generation after generation. And so for so many reasons, this is truly like a center that I feel needs a lot of work, whether we're defined or undefined. So the solar plexus it's spirit consciousness. This is the only center that's literally like our connection to spirit is through the center, whether we feel connected or not. It's through this center. So this is emotional and social awareness. It's abundance of spirit. So if you have the gate 55 in your chart, it comes from it comes off of, we'll go over some of the gates here later, but it comes off of the emotional center going towards the root center, the bottom root center. And that is the gate of abundance and spirit. And that is the gate that oftentimes, if you have this defined in your chart, or if you know someone that's defined in your chart, in their chart, they're going to have times that they feel completely separated from spirit, and they're going to be grasping for, but it's going to come through in a material realm. It's going to come through of like money, possessions, things like that. Like, I don't have no money, so I got to like grasp, I got to do this. But it's really this desire to be closer to spirit. It's really not abundance of material things. That's not bad, but that's what it's being masked in. And if we can, the closer we feel to spirit, the more of all those other things just tend to start to come in. And so this center is all about spirit. It's all about abundance. And it's all, our emotions are literally the foundation of our being. It's feelings, it's moods, it's sensitivities. And the biology like I said earlier, before we did the visualization, is the nervous system. And I did a little looking too, into the other parts of the body that this is, to see how emotions, are, how our emotions are connected to these certain organs. But like the lungs, right? The lungs are part of this, the biology. And grief, whenever I meet anyone with lung issues, I've written about this before. There's unprocessed and unresolved grief. There's sadness, and there's an ability of like not being able to let go. So you see how emotions are connected to our lungs, right? And our kidneys. It's all about fear. A lot of emotions that are around fear get attached and caught up in our kidneys. The pancreas is worry, anxiety, worry. Prostate. Most often, like men with prostate type issues, there's unresolved anger, there's depression. There's a lot of sexual feelings of inadequacy, not feeling, for lack of a better word, like a man, and it can come through in these areas in the body. And I mean, we all know nervous system, right? Like when we are out of whack, we are in fight or flight or freeze or fawn. And that is our nervous system. Now there's different parts of the nervous system. It's like nervous systems basically, but just for the sake of simplicity, when our body is flooded with, the emotions around worry, right? Around sadness, around anxiety, depression, anger, our nervous system, we act out of that space, and we act out of our nervous system just gets out of whack. It's just dysregulated. But when we're operating in abundance of spirit, just like what we did in the beginning of this session, right? Connected to spirit, connected to self, connected to God, our heart starts to slow down a little bit, our breathing starts to slow, and we start to regulate a bit. And like Danielle said, we're able to receive when we're in that fight flight mode, freeze and fawn. We're on alert. We literally, our body cannot receive anything. And then we're thinking that every emotion that we're feeling, every fear, every anxiety, it's real, and it's so real to us. But is it, So I like to say that this is the most romantic center in our body graph. That's just me. Because this is truly where we are romanced, it's where we can feel compassion, where we're connected to spirit and God. Like I've said, we're connected to another person. If you think about that, when you're connected, to, your spouse, or those first few times that maybe you dated, those first few dates where you're all giddy, it's just nothing else matters, right? You're in this state of, of bliss in a sense. And, it can be brought on through music, through poetry, through birds singing, birds chirping, birds, whatever, a beautiful sunset, maybe a baby laughing, the purity of just a baby laughing. So there's just so many layers and levels to the center. And like I said, this is the most powerful center in the body graph. Everything comes, everything that comes from the center, it's mostly distortion. You can see even now, in the world, how much emotion impacts you can't even talk to someone in their emotional state, right? If they're too hyper vigilant in that, there's no getting through to that person, right? So this governs so much, and it can cause so much distortion, but the level of the highest distortion it can cause the greatest beauty as well too. So remember that we live in a yin yang, universe. So it operates in waves. And I put this here, you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. I'll tell you a little story after a bit about that if I remember. But that's the thing, you know, because these waves, it can feel, if you're emotionally defined, and even if you're undefined and you're around an emotionally defined person that's unaware of their emotional definition, it can feel like these waves are taking you down. Like these emotions are literally taking you out and taking you down. And it's about learning it's working with the waves, not being afraid of the waves, paying attention to know when the waves might be coming in, looking at the signs, at the clues that you're being given based on how you feel, where you're at within yourself, and supporting yourself and taking care of yourself in that process. Again, whether you're defined or undefined. So this is the emotional wave circuitry. I'm just going to briefly go through these, but you can kind of see, and you can look at your own chart, or anybody that, you know, that you've run charts for, to see kind of what their wave is. But the tribal, excuse me, the tribal wave is the yellow. And that is really about touch. It's about needs. It's very sensitive to touch. It's about intimacy. It's about breaking down barriers to feel intimate with someone. And that could be very like in a sexual way as well too. There's this is the center of sexuality as well too. So gate 6, if you have this channel, it's a very kind of more of a tantric type of channel, because you're really breaking down the barriers of intimacy. And the only thing that keeps us from being intimate within ourselves or other people are masks. It's facades. And so breaking down all of those barriers. And the 1949 here. And then the 3740. So that's the tribal wave. So basically, if you have these wave or these gates at all, or it doesn't even have to be the whole channel, you could just have maybe one of those gates, and maybe your spouse or child or coworker or something like that has the other gate, and it completes the channel. Or maybe a transit's coming in and it's completing the channel. It doesn't really matter. But if you have any of these gates here in the yellow, it can feel, or if, you know, anybody that you know does, what happens is it builds up, 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 this tension and this like it just builds up, and all of a sudden it just like explodes. It's like it explodes out. And then the thing is that the person that has this feels great after they explode. They feel great. They feel good. They feel like, hey, I don't need to, like, I'm good. I don't need to you know, talk anymore about this. I feel good. It's like this. It's like if you think of you know, a bottle that has pent up like pressure, right? It's just pressure and pressure. It just needs to be released. Once it's released, they're good. However, the person that they release it all on may not feel so good. So the person that has these gates or these channels really needs to understand the signs, like when they start to kind of feel that pent up, when they start to feel that, because they can let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. And then it's like, rah, and so it can cause tension, and it can cause hurt in relationships, because the other person's like, where did that come from? Especially, and that can cause a lot of confusion, because if you're on the other end of that, you can be like, wait a minute, now I have to process some of this stuff because you just said a lot of mean stuff, or you just said a lot of stuff that now I'm like trying to figure out what's going on here. And then where the other person's like, no, I'm good now, we're good. And it's like, no, we're not good, because you said some things that I want to process here. So it can really cause some disharmony within relationships, if there's unawareness around it. Now with awareness, it can be fine. It's just bringing awareness into this. So like I said, those are the ones in the yellow. And I have them written here, the 19, 49, 37, 40, 6 and 59. Now the 59 is in the sacral, but it's attached to the 6. So you don't need the whole channel though to feel this. So the individual wave is the purple. And the individual circuitry is very mutative, meaning that through this wave, if you have the 3955 or the 1222, that you have to be by yourself when you're in this. It's a very melancholy wave, but it's a very creative wave. So the mutative process of this is something is trying to come through you and trying to mutate something, a shift, a change, a new awareness, a new perspective. You might not know right away. It's not something that like you're, going to get something afterwards, like, ooh, a new perspective, a new awareness. It may, but it might be a process that you're going through, and each wave is part of a bigger, process. So it's very melancholy. It's very creative. And it's pretty even keel for the most part, but when it's up, it's up. And when it's down, it's down. And when it's down, realizing that one of the clues is that you're just not in the mood to be around people. Like you're just not in the mood to be social at all. So realize if you have any of these gates, and if you are undefined as well too, and you're around someone that's defined and you have any of these gates activated in you too, you might be like feeling similar energies as well too. So it's all worth, paying attention to. So it's about being by yourself. It's noticing those cues of going, oh, yep, I don't feel like going out right now. I don't feel like being around people. I don't feel like talking to anybody. I don't feel like returning any messages. I feel like turning my phone off. I feel like stopping all social media for the day, maybe 2 days, and just getting out in nature, maybe going in your room, put on some music. Let this, if you have individual circuitry, allow this to be your muse. So this is the wave where if you can navigate it correctly, meaning not afraid to engage with it, because it will take you down to the depths of yourself and life, but you'll be able to see, and I know this might sound strange, but I have these, both of these. I have the 12, I don't have the 22, but I have the 12, and I have the full 3955. But you will start to see like everything will look more, it's a very romantic part. Like everything will look brighter. Everything will look, or it will look darker. Everything will look exaggerated, I guess, is a good word for it. You will start to notice things that you maybe haven't noticed before, because it's almost like time starts to slow down if you can be in this. And it's a really beautiful time to, again, just kind of get lost in the wave. Again, put on some music. I know where I'm at in my waves based on the music that I'm in the mood to listen to. So that's a good way to understand for you. Like if I'm like wanting to listen to some really melancholy stuff and like very introspective, contemplative stuff, then that will tell me where my, where my wave is. So use clues like that for yourself, like if say you like watching movies or shows, like, okay, well, what am I in the mood for right now? Right. Am I in the mood for a comedy? Am I in the mood for maybe something that's like, contemplative, something that I have to sit and I have to just like really be with. Right. So just get curious about that, but honoring that you're not in the mood. One of the things that like my kids will ask me a lot of times, like, hey, can we do this? Can we do this? And especially if it's on a certain day. And I always say, I'm like, if I'm in the mood, great. If not, then No, because I don't know until then. I don't know. And it used to bug them so much. But what actually, I will tell you this, what used to bother them was me saying, yes, we can do that. And then it would come to that day and I wasn't in the mood. And then I would tell them, I'm really not in the mood. And then they would be very disappointed. And so now I communicate my waves to them. And I just say, if I'm in the mood, great. But if I'm not, then I'm not, but I'm not in the position where I can promise you that. And so they're okay now with that because they know if I'm not in the mood, they don't have fun either. even if we do something, because it's just not. And that's the thing. It's honoring your wave, because if you're not in a mood to be around people or to do anything like that, if you're in a melancholy state, something's trying to move through you. And so you're not going to, like, it's not, if you say you have plans, say a friend asked to go out or whatever it is, right? And then you're like, oh God, I'm in this like wave right now. I wish I wouldn't have said yes to it. Oh, like, you're not going to have the experience that you were hoping for. And neither is your friend or whoever it is that you're going with. So you're actually doing yourself and the other person a disservice if you hold to that commitment without honoring your wave. So the best thing to do within this is learn how to communicate to people, especially if you're emotionally defined, is to say like, hey, right now that sounds amazing, but I'm going to have to give it some time. And then I'll let you know. And the people that are correct for you will honor that and they'll allow you to take time. And the people that aren't, you'll know. And so truth will come the more you're able to communicate, your truth as well too. So the third type of wave is the abstract or collective wave. And that's the green right here. It's the outside ones. It's the 35, 36. I can't even read that one actually. 41. I can't even see it right now. It slipped my mind. But anyway, so this is I have the 36, and so often I have a lot of people that have the 35 in my life. And I haven't played music in a while, but I used to play music, and I had people that I'd play music with, and oftentimes we would want to record or do something with it and have these expectations for it. And then, realizing that I'm like, no, we're just doing this literally for the sake of the experience. Because every time we had an expectation set, there would be like a letdown. So, and that's what this is. So the abstract wave or the collective wave is literally, it's the experience just for the sake of the experience. And you can, if you have these gates, any one of these gates, you can get triggered into a wave. And this wave can feel like a really up and down kind of wave, like very like quick and kind of intense. But it's by expectations. So if you have these, realize that there are certain things that you have to let expectations go. So with no expectations, and when you move into something just for the sake of the experience, then you can actually receive and have the mutation of like what's actually is supposed to be there in that moment. So like say you enter into a job or a relationship and you have these expectations of what it's supposed to be, but you continually get kind of let down. It's like, oh, this is not at all what I expected. And then you get frustrated and you get angry and you feel disappointed and you feel just like bitter about it all. And it's because like, check yourself and be like, oh my gosh, like, what are my expectations in this? Especially if you have these gates, what are my expectations? And is this something that I can like let go of my expectations and just be there for the experience and allow whatever is to come forth to come forth? So just be aware of that. So a defined solar plexus, like I said before too. So if you have a defined solar plexus, or anybody else that you have worked with or are going to work with, or children, partners, spouses, friends, anybody, all of this we went over too when we went over authorities, because if you have a defined emotional solar plexus, this is your authority. This is how you make decisions. You are not here to be impulsive. You're here to wait. Clarity comes when you wait. And it's the hardest thing to do because when we're in our emotional wave, it feels so true. Like it feels so real, and it's not, because truth reveals itself over time. And the longer you wait, the more perspectives you're going to be able to see, the more facets you'll have. I put here the example. I wanted to read you guys something. This comes from a human design book. And this really gives a good example of what happens with an emotionally defined person with a emotion or a defined solar plexus or emotional center, and what it's like to have this, especially in the wave, and why it's so important to wait. So the advantage of having emotional definition is the depth that can be cultivated on any topic. As one moves through the wave, its many perspectives can bring great insight. For example, a photographer who wants to understand the nature of a flower. So the spleenically oriented photographer, so if someone was spleenically defined or splenic authority, would take a picture capturing an exquisite moment, beautiful moment, right? And then they'd move on to the next one, because that's what the spleen does. It's like, ooh, next one, ooh, let's keep going. But for those with a defined solar plexus, one picture like is never enough. They would take a series of pictures all day long, capturing the light, the perspective, the camera. They would know how the flower looks in the morning and how it looks when the sun sets. They would know its fragrance. They would know how it feels to the touch, how it looks bending in the wind. When the emotional system is given the time it needs to unfold, it becomes an intelligence with deep sensitivity that grasps things at the ever-changing emotional level. And that is the level of spirit. So just think about that. Like if you're emotionally defined, or if you know someone that's emotionally defined, you can like think about that example. And they're not here to be impulsive. They're here to feel the high and the low of the wave. And it can feel high and it can feel low, and it can feel in that high, like, yes, this is a yes, just wait. And it can feel in the low that you're ready to just like throw in the towel and be done with it all. But just wait. And clarity will come over time. So give yourself time to sleep on things. Give yourself time. The life of an emotionally defined person is never rushed into like decision making. Some decisions might take weeks or months, especially if they're big decisions. So the other thing too is, and I'm not sure if you remember from before when we talked about this as authority, it will never get 100% clarity. How you understand clarity for yourself is when you're ready to confront whatever situation you're in. Maybe it's with another person, maybe it's a decision you're making and you're like, oh, I don't know, like you will feel there'll be a shift, and you'll know the more you do this, the more you work with this for yourself, you'll know that the only thing I can say is you'll just know the more you do this for yourself is you'll just know there'll be a sense of less nervousness, a sense of, okay, yeah, I can do this now, rather than like, oh God, what am I going to say? Like, oh, because even for the defined emotional center, they still don't like confrontation. It's easier for them than the undefined center, but there's a nervousness. And this is when the defined center can say things and that really hurt and can be really like a dagger in people's, hearts, really. So giving yourself time, when you have that clarity, you're not going to be nervous. You're going to feel pretty clear, but it's about 60, 70% clear. I don't know the exact percentage, but basically you're not going to be 100% clear. So if you're expecting to be 100% clear, you're going to be waiting forever. So the thing to watch out for and to pay attention to is the level of nervousness that you have. So I'll give you an example. I had to make a decision a few years ago. and it was one of my kiddos' schools. And I was like, oh, like, I think I want to do this, but I didn't know for sure. I was like kind of going back and forth. I was like, yes. And then I was like, no. And I was like, yes. So I was like, okay, I got to just give this time. All right. I'm emotionally defined. Right. So I have to give it time. And then I remember his teacher wanted to talk to me about it. And I was like, I found myself avoiding it. So that's how I know if I'm avoiding whatever it is, I'm like, I'm not ready yet. But I used to just keep avoiding things. Now I don't avoid them. I just say, hey, I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. I will reach out to you when I am. Thank you for your patience. And so, but I know it's like, oh, if I want to avoid it, if I'm not in the mood, right? If I just can't, if I have this nervousness about talking about it, like there's just not clarity yet. And there was one afternoon that I was like, I remember the moment I was like sitting on my couch and I was like, yeah, I'm ready. And I was able to reach out and it was like, no big deal. And I was like, it was just the way it was. And it was not emotionally charged in any way. So I just share that with you because the more, if you're working with someone that's emotionally defined, if you have a child that's emotionally defined, if you are emotionally defined, waiting is the medicine. Like that is the medicine. So, let's see here. Where are we at? Oh, this is how you make correct decisions for yourself. Because again, if you're emotionally defined, this is how you make decisions. This is your authority. Do not be impulsive. Don't, on acting on your emotional state. Just because you feel it does not mean it's true. It means that it's true that you're feeling it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's truth in the situation that's happening. So honor your feelings, pay attention to the stories that are allowing for the emotional release, because it's chemicals. That's all emotions are. And again, I'm a full-on acknowledging emotions. I'm not minimizing emotions at all by saying it's chemicals, but that's what it is on a biological level. So pay attention to the stories you're telling yourself that are possibly triggering the emotions that you're having. It's like, what am I telling myself in this moment that is allowing me to feel anxious? That's allowing me to feel depressed. It's allowing me to feel angry. And just be with that. Understand that. Get curious. And it's never about the situation. It's about what's triggering it. And there's always a root to it. There's always a root of like something that you can go back to. But this is kind of goes along with our class last week too. So if you haven't listened to that class, I advise to listen to that as well. But move with the wave, just don't get taken down by it. So I wanted to share with you the wave story. I had a dream, and I might have shared this before, so I'll make it quick, but I had a dream. This is years ago, that when I was working with my wave, like I was taking notes, I was tracking it. I was like really like paying attention to like, oh, where am I at in my wave? I was being very, very aware of it, because it's something that caused a lot of pain in my life. And times that I've spoken before, I've shared my story. But anyway, one night I had a dream, and I was standing on this beach, and kind of like a little ways out into the water. And I remember this big wave started coming up like towards me, and started like, I mean, super, super high, like way higher than myself, like completely was going to engulf me. And I just stood there in the dream, and I allowed the wave to like go over me. And I stood there and I didn't fall down. And I remember looking back at the wave, and the wave passed, but I was still standing. And it came 2 more times for a total of 3 different waves. So I knew then that I was like, okay, my subconscious is telling me that, it's like, all right, I'm moving with the waves. I'm not afraid of them anymore, right? Because if you think about it, even a wave in an ocean, so often it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me down, right? So we can feel that a lot. There's fear around some of these deep emotions. We want to escape them, right? Through any distraction, through anything. I mean, and so the best thing to do is to face them head on and to go into them, but just don't get taken down by them. So ride the wave rather than, getting crashed. Don't allow it to take you down where you're like feeling like you can't even breathe and you can't even see anything. And you're just trying to get up from, trying to catch your breath. So that's a pretty intense place to be. And if you're emotionally defined, I'm sure you know what that feels like. So understand that the mind cannot talk you out of your emotions. So often we want to just bypass and be like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or I'm fine. I'm whatever it is. We've learned so many coping strategies, but our waves are a continual process. If you're emotionally defined, you are going to be always somewhere on the wave that it never stops. So it's just the way you are. If you're emotionally defined, nothing's wrong with you. It's just the way it is. So the truth for an emotionally defined person is that there is no truth in the now. And the correct people for me will not pressure me into making a decision before it's time. And I'm going to put one little thing in there too. You, as you work with your wave, will stop pressuring yourself into making a decision before your time also. And learning to trust the timing, because it's really about timing and trusting it. So I'm going to just finish up with the undefined emotional center, and then we will stop for questions after that. So the undefined emotional center, this is the other half of the people that are in the world, and they're very sensitive to their environments. Like I said earlier, these people are the true empaths, not that other people can't feel, that are defined, but they're bringing in everything. And it is important that you gauge your environment if you are emotionally undefined, and the people that are around you by your emotional state. So it's so important that you're in touch with how you feel, and that you validate how you feel, because how you feel is actually a barometer for what the room is for the person you're with or the people that you're with. And if you feel very uncomfortable emotionally, if you're like, oh gosh, I'm feeling this, where this is the mistake though for undefined people that are not aware, is that they think it's themselves when it's not. This is an amazing tool of insight into others and into the emotional frequency of a room, the emotional frequency of the people that you're with. And if it doesn't feel good, if you're feeling off, if you're feeling awkward, if you're feeling just really uncomfortable in that. Now, it's good to know, am I being uncomfortable because maybe I have to face something and I don't want to face it, right? Or is it no, this just doesn't feel good? And there's a difference. You'll know that difference the more you play with this and the more you do this for yourself. But there's a difference. So you are here to be a wise guide in who is emotionally safe for you, who's healthy emotionally, who's stable emotionally, what environments are actually healthy for you, and be in those environments. And then the ones that are not, you get to choose to leave. I mean, you can stay too, but pay attention to how you feel in those environments, because if it's not healthy, you're going to feel it. Give yourself permission to leave a room or a person's aura, if you're feeling emotionally uncomfortable. Maybe you have a spouse that's emotionally defined and they're unaware, right? Or even a kid, right? Maybe one of your kids is emotionally defined and they're unaware, and they're just it can feel so powerful to be around someone that's emotionally defined and unaware, because there's that unawareness, and that there's power in that. And it can feel very intimidating. And it can feel very uncomfortable. And so it's okay to give yourself permission to say, you know what, hey, I need to leave right now. And, I'll be back later if it feels better. And you're really good also too, because you're undefined, you're that mirror as well too, for the environment that you're in. You're a mirror for the person. If you're with someone that is in their wave and they're unaware and you're feeling it, you're going to reflect back their wave. So be careful, because sometimes manipulative relationships can begin with an emotionally defined person and emotionally undefined person, because the emotionally undefined person will be feeling this and reflecting it and amplifying it back to the emotionally defined person. If the emotionally defined person is not aware, if they're not conscious of their waves, of their definition here, and if they're not aware of themselves emotionally, they will project their own stuff back onto the emotionally undefined person and make them feel like they're the ones that are out of control emotionally. So just pay attention to that as well too. Pay attention to those dynamics, because this is why this center is so critical. It's so powerful, and so much distortion can come and so much beauty at the same time. It's just how we work with it. Like anything, right? It's like anything. It's how we work with it. So be careful that you don't attach yourself to another person's emotional experience. Be careful that you don't identify or take it personally, because it's not about you. This is about their own emotional experience. Learning how to just simply hold space for someone, if you can, if you're able to, is very beneficial than getting caught up in codependent cycles of getting attached to someone's emotions and then just, reacting from that space. So, yeah, it's very interesting how this dynamic can play out. And there's a lot of wisdom in this center, like so much wisdom. And this is where, we're moving to, you've heard me talk about this mutation in 2027, and it's really about emotional maturity. It's about emotional awareness. It's about spirit consciousness. And the more we can show up in that way, and the more we can transmute our emotions from things that we simply just react from, to being aware, we start to shift the whole frequency of not only our homes, ourselves, but our environments that we're in as well too. So the not self theme, how you can decondition the center if you are undefined here, is you can ask yourself these questions. Am I trying to avoid confrontation? Remember that your strategy and authority will lead you into the correct confrontations that you need for your own growth. But, is this something that I have to be a part of, or is this something that it's really not a part of my growth process? And you'll know that the more you work with this, the more you just trust that you'll know. What am I avoiding? Like saying to another person for fear of fill in the blank, right? They might not like me. They might get upset with me. I might hurt their feelings. Because remember, you feel their feelings almost greater than they might feel them. And therefore, you don't want to go to that space because it doesn't feel good. So oftentimes you will avoid any type of thing. It's just like, oh, it's better left unsaid. Oh, better left unsaid. So another thing that you can think of too is, like, do you have this belief of, I can't tell the truth or I will hurt their feelings or they won't like me, or etc. Or because it's avoidance of experiencing other feelings because you feel it so strongly, just like what I said here just a bit ago. So here's a big one. I would rather live a lie than confront the truth because of how I may make someone else feel. So oftentimes this can be a deep belief within someone that's undefined, who has emotional trauma from childhood. So if you are undefined, solar plexus, it is probably a very wise thing to do inner child healing, to do shadow work, to do those things, because as a child, if you're undefined, you will be conditioned by, if one or both of your parents, siblings, caretakers were defined, you will be conditioned by that. And it happens. I mean, I condition people I'm around even as adults because I'm emotionally defined. So if you grew up with an unaware emotional adult and you're an undefined emotional center, this is going to be critical for you to ask yourself these questions so that you can start to face some of these fears of emotions, because a lot of times it gets associated with, power, or lack thereof, lack of power, just kind of trying to like just brush it all under the rug, so that we don't have to deal with this. It'll just pretend like it didn't happen. That's a big theme for this center. So I just wanted to bring that up. And but yeah, so that's the other thing too. If you have a child, or if you know a child, or or if you think back to maybe even your childhood, maybe because of this programming, the child can be like taking on all this, right? And then they're acting out because they're confused by how they feel, because they're feeling so much. Because remember, the undefined center takes in and amplifies. So imagine a child bringing in all these emotions, personalizing all of them, because that's what a child does. They personalize it and they internalize it as it's their issue, their problem, and they're confused. They don't know what to do with that information and those feelings. And so it can look like they're maybe being behavior issues, things like that. So just be aware of that. There's generally always more than meets the eye in anything, but especially with this center. So any questions on this center? I have all of the gates here that you can read a little bit more about if you'd like to see the themes of each one of these. But any questions or comments, clarifications that you have?
I don't really have a question. I just kind of have a comment. So I have a child, obviously, who's emotional solar plexus, and I feel like she is so hard for myself to kind of help or understand or any of those things.
Mhm.
I just think that they're very hard people to really just, I don't know, not to necessarily get. I mean, I get her to a point, but it's like, as a parent, help her.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm good at helping her. I think I'm good at getting her, but knowing exactly what to do. I mean, other than the fact, like you said, as far as like just continuously reminding her that there's no truth in the now, that just give it some space and time, because the waves you're talking about, I totally see those all the time. They're like, it's just like blah, and then it's like, okay, and then it's like blah, and a very frustrating, like it's a very frustrating emotion. Like you can just see that she's super frustrated, but she doesn't even know what she's frustrated by. She can't really understand herself. And sometimes she's kind of like, I'm like, what's kind of going on? What's wrong? She's like, I don't know. My heart hurts. Well, I don't know what to do with that information. Like, I don't understand what is making your heart hurt, and you don't understand how to explain it to me. So I'm like, what the crap do I do? But I mean, I get it, because like you said, I'm undefined in that area. She's totally defined. And I'm just like, screaming inside, like, I don't even know what to do. I can't even help explain you or help you at all.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because the example you used about the 55, I mean, she's totally like the 55, I guess, 39 or something like that.
Mhm.
And so it's crazy because you were mentioning abundance, and it was interesting how abundance leads to spirit, because she's a very spiritual being in her own way naturally. It's not like she's had to been taught.
Yeah.
It's like it's there already. But she makes reference in a way of money, meaning she'll be like, well, I don't really want you to buy that. I mean, do you like have enough money? Is that going to be okay? It's always about money, which is so weird, because that you mentioned that, because everything she'll say is like, I don't want you to spend that because I'm afraid that like one day you might just not have enough money and will be poor because of me. And I'm like, for real? Like, no, I wouldn't buy it for you or get something for you or spend the money if I couldn't do it. But it's like, she always makes references to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a very hard, I don't know. I feel like it's a very hard center to just I don't process and be able to help and deal with.
It is. And you brought up a really good point, Danielle, because I feel, being an emotionally defined person, and I have 2 kiddos that are emotionally defined as well, and one that's not. The best thing that I know that I can do, that I wish that I would have had, you know, one of my parents do, or someone that knew how to do this. And this is what I try to do for my 2 of my boys, is I just hold space. Like, I do have boundaries. There's certain things that I'm like, okay, I understand. Like, for instance, my 16-year-old is emotionally defined, and he can be like, raw, and it's very intimidating because it's just this powerful energy that's just like, oh, and even I'm emotionally defined, and I can feel it too, because it's very powerful, and it's very intimidating, and you don't know what to say. And it really, like, it shakes the whole energy of, of the room. And it makes people feel very uncomfortable. And so there's times that where I just have to say to him too, like, hey, like, this is not okay. Like, the tone right now with me, like, doesn't really feel that good. I understand that you're upset, and you have every, like, be upset, totally fine. And I just try to hold space as much as I can while having that boundary as well too, and staying calm in it. And like, there's times that he just gets upset, and I want to fix, because I'm a parent, right? Like, I want to fix, then I realize, like, there's nothing to fix. He's just in a wave. He has to move through it. All I can do is just hold space where he feels safe enough to be able to feel everything that he needs to feel. And so I think, Danielle, like, I don't know if that will help you or not, but it's our own even belief as parents too, right? That we can address. That's the thing. Anybody that's in your life that's emotionally defined will challenge your own beliefs about yourself, especially a child, because right, because it's like, I want to fix. It's like, but there's nothing I can do. So it can really make a parent feel almost helpless, and it can trigger a parent like, no tomorrow too. So it's I don't know, does that resonate? Does that help at all?
No, it does. And I mean, I totally get the whole triggering part, because there's certain aspects within that, when it is that frustrating moment, that it is a lot of energy, and I feel people's energy a lot. And when those waves kind of come through, it triggers me to the point where, like, I'm ready to lash back out too. Like, wait a minute, like, I get this, I understand, you've got to do what you got to do, but we're not going to do it this way. But like, in that moment, I don't really think you can do anything. Well, I guess I've realized for myself, I can't lash back out or really be that stern parent at that point. I just have to say, okay, in a calm way, like, okay, I'm letting you do this. I don't appreciate it. I don't like the way you're handling this situation, because this is not the way you handle it. If you don't understand yourself, you have to tell me that, and I can do what I can to help you. But I don't even know if that understands you. And it's just more or less me learning how to be more calm within the waves, because it really triggers me bad
Sure.
for whatever reason.
Absolutely. And I mean, and this is I believe too, especially the 39, anybody who has the 3955, they will provoke. And there's, shadow of provoking, but it's provoking to spirit. She's trying to figure out, like, she's trying to find spirit, and she's provoking other people to find spirit as well too. And so it's her unconscious way of trying to figure out who's correct for her and who's not correct for her. And that's the 3955. So I mean, anybody who has that will go through that. And one of the things that's helped me too with my kids is, like, talking to them when they're in the wave doesn't generally help, but when they're out of that wave, I can try to, like, help reflect and be like, hey, what was going on there, and just see what he says. And then I can just say, like, hey, like, I don't really appreciate, when you're doing this, like, it doesn't feel good. Like, if you're, like, using this tone with me and whatnot. And then I'll remind him sometimes when he's in his wave, but planting those seeds when they're not in the wave, because here's the thing, if you know of anybody that is defined and they're in a wave, they will not listen to anything. They're hearing, because if you look at the especially the 2212 as well too. It's sound. It's very acoustic. 55 is 39. It's all very acoustic. They will not hear what you're saying in the way that you're saying it. They will hear it in a completely different way. And so it's just, it won't have what you're, like what we want to do right in those moments isn't, they're not hearing it the way that you're trying to communicate it. So the best thing to do is to, pay attention to when they're in the wave, allow them to have space. Maybe you need to leave too, right? Like if they're be like, okay, I need some time by myself too, and then figure out when they're not in that wave and be like, hey, I really need to talk to you about this right now, and because when they're not in that wave,
they can hear it.
Like I have,
yeah, because she's 2212 too, the full channel. So that makes sense as well.
So
okay.
Very acoustic. So, that's the thing. Like, and if you have clients that are emotionally defined, if they're in a wave, tell them if you're in a wave, cancel your session, we'll reschedule, because they're not going to hear it. They're not going to get anything out of it. That's the thing. That was one of the best things that I had as from a coach that knew human design. This is about 4 years ago. She told me, she's like, hey, if you're in a wave, she's like, we can reschedule, and I'm totally gonna be flexible and totally understand. Don't think that you're canceling because but if you're in a wave, I don't even want to have a session with you because it's not going to do you any good.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. Like with anybody, if they're in the wave and you're trying to be like, this is like, whatever, it's a spouse or kid or whatever, they're not going to hear it. It's just going to create more distortion,
Okay.
It doesn't mean you got to put up with, bad behavior. But it's not going to, the time to talk about it is when they're not in that wave.
Okay. I got you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
I just find that center is a very difficult, difficult center. I mean, I guess they all can have their pros and cons. I just feel like emotional people, I don't know, just seem to me like it's just harder to kind of wrap my head around it all to be helpful if I need to be, because I know how to go away from that type of person.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I've always dealt with the emotional beings that have been around me. It's like, okay, I can just disappear or just kind of get out of, like you said before, their aura. But like when you love someone, you can't just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting that kind of individual came into my life.
Yeah. And she's provoking you in a way too, that, it leads to your own growth as well too. So it's
true
that too. So, but, cause that's the thing too, with anybody that's emotionally defined around you, like the more work that we do with our own emotional awareness as well too, the less that they're going to be able to trigger, I'm at the point now with my kid, like my 16-year-old, like I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, I don't take anything personal anymore or anything like that, just because I know it's just a wave and I know he'll get through it. And he's not like mean or anything like that. He used to be. There definitely would be times that he would say things, but it's the worst thing that we can do, especially being an undefined solar plexus, is to personalize and to take things personal. From that, it's hard to do because you're bringing it in and you're amplifying it, but to not get attached to someone else's emotional experience. That's the only way that you're going to be able to help anyone. If you want to help them, that's the only way you can help them, is not get attached to their emotional experience. Allow them to experience it. Don't get attached to it. Don't take it personally. Don't take it, don't identify with it. Just try to hold space for it. And if you have a hard time doing that, then there's some work within too that can be done, and this is because relationships provoke growth within each person, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have any questions about the center?
So not really a question, just more comments. So I just find it interesting because I've always kind of labeled myself as an empath, and then, to find out, yeah, I do have that undefined solar plexus. Just kind of find it fascinating, even with the splenic and the intuition thing. I've always kind of, I'm intuitive. Like, it's just really cool how that actually shows like that in my chart.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely I'm very sensitive to environments. So yeah, and I've found myself always, yeah, I'm like, oh, I can't be here right now. I gotta get out of this space. And it's either, for me to cool off and shake off, the energy that I picked up, just to get out of that space and
Yeah.
kind of let that clear.
Yeah, it's very important for undefined emotional, beings to, like you just said, to like shake that off, like kind of like a dog shakes off, when they're whatever. It's like shaking it off sometimes, like leaving it, like just being like, okay, breathing in, like grounding yourself, centering in, shaking it up, doing what you need to do to, to come back to yourself in that center.
Right.
So that
Shake
you're
off
not
those
identifying
emotions
with it.
that aren't mine. But yeah,
Yes.
that's been a learning curve. Even that's something I've kind of noticed, before getting into the human design, but it's definitely kind of amplified itself, like now that I'm aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. All right. Well, I wanted to give a little bit of, so we'll have 2 more classes after this class. And the next class we'll do is the root, which is the last center. And that shouldn't take the whole class. What I'd want to do though, too, is give opportunity for, if anybody wants to practice reading my chart, we can do it in class, or we can do it outside of class if you want practice doing that. Now, you don't have to. It's something though that you can do if you'd like to do that and get feedback from myself. If you want to, better your skills, it's a great way to do that. And so again, no pressure at all. If you want to do that though, and if you want to do it in class and really be like brave, great. If not, if you want to do it one-on-one, just connect with me and we can find a time to, just do 15, 20 minutes and you can just kind of go through it or have those questions of, using my chart as an example, if you were reading somebody else's chart. So that's something that's available to you if you should choose to do that. And then the last class we'll do is, we'll just do kind of a wrap up review. I'll probably go over maybe a few other things. There's a few other things that I'm thinking about doing to that last class. So it'll definitely be a good class. And then I also will be sending out this week the last payment for the class. I know 1 or 2 of you have already paid like the full thing up front, which is great. So you won't be getting a bill, but just check your emails this week for the last payment that I'll send out. And I think that's it. I think that's it. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I appreciate all you being here. And this will be up. The recording will be up in the group here in the next day or so. And the notes are, again, here under class notes in the group for you to use however you'd like. So have a beautiful rest of your evening and we'll see you next week. And again, just reach out to me if you want to do a practice reading on myself. And if not, that's totally fine as well too. But again, it's available for you to do that, to sharpen your skills if you want to. So good night and we'll see you next week.
Thank you